What was supposed to be the next big thing, but totally flopped and tanked? Google Plus was supposed to topple Facebook. This was one of the worst product launches of all time. They had like 1 week where everyone was super excited about it and wanted to try it, and they limited it to invite-only. Very few people could get in. By the time they opened it up to everyone, nobody cared anymore. Wasn't Gmail limited to invite-only for years? Then again, it's not vulnerable to network effects, since email is a standardized protocol. One of Gmail's major features back in the day was storage space, where other free mail clients would give out storage space in terms of megabytes. I believe Hotmail at the time gave around 25 megabytes of storage. Gmail came in and offered 1 gigabyte of storage. I assume that storage was the reason for Gmail's staggered release. Although invite-only for a while, it was a game changer in terms of free email. For me at least. It was effing awesome though, and I wanted it to succeed. But they effed up its marketing. And I'm a 20-year marketing veteran. The circles concept? Brilliant. It basically let you determine whether a contact could have totally sterile, somewhat filtered, or totally uncensored access to your posts. And man, it was awesome. Its UI was amazing. The concept was better than any social media since, and synced with our G Drive. Wish it would come back. I loved it. Ditched Facebook for it and made a great group of online contacts friends. 3D TV. I remember those being sold somewhere when we had to buy a couch, and accidentally renting the 3D version of a movie. But it never took off. 3D failed for 5 or 6 times in the last 50 years. Every time it is presented as next big thing. Every time it fails. Yup, this isn't anything new. The major issue seems to be that it gives a certain amount people a headache or they find it otherwise uncomfortable. Add to that the need for the glasses even in the current iteration, and you can start to see where there's an accessibility issue too. 3D TV movies will be never work because of a couple of things. 1. Having to wear glasses goggles to enjoy and relax is an added element that people just don't feel that the annoyance is worth it for the final product. 2. In the real world, your eyes can focus on anything you want it to. You can adjust to focus on stuff in the foreground or in the background. 3D technology currently is recorded like any film, and thus you're stuck focusing on just the items the camera wants you to focus on. This is what leads to headaches because that's not a natural way to interact with the 3D world. It causes eye strain. And unless they can find a way to record a 3D movie where everything is in focus, this will always be the biggest hurdle. It didn't really die. The tech is there, and very available. What happened was the pleading calls of theaters scraping by on their crappy business model. We're already at a state of people not going to sporting events and new movies because of our access to top-level comforts of watching these things in our homes without the hassle. The same thing happened with holographic videos. Source: ex-wife heavily engineered this for Dolby 15 years ago. Plan got dropped because of larger cinema companies. Now their company devoted their time to repelling laser pointers at pilots. Which is highly profitable for some reason. I'm very interested in the laser pointer repellent. I'm assuming it's military stuff? I'm a civil pilot and never heard of something like this. Universal Pictures' Dark Universe. The Mummy with Tom Cruise was supposed to start a whole line of movies. But when that one died, it took the rest with it. Evil guy at the end. Let the games begin. Narrator: the games did not begin. Oh, wasn't that Dracula Untold? What an absolute effing waste of celluloid. Van Helsing really could have been the catalyst for a fantastic universe. It wasn't even that bad either. I mean, I've seen bigger pieces of SH. Like slicked back hair, white bathing suit pieces of SH. Sloppy steaks at Trifoni's. Segway. While they ultimately didn't pan out, my uncle had a unique experience with one that really improved his quality of life. He had MS, and when he could still walk, he got a Segway, probably 2003-04-ish. He found that by using it to get around, he was obviously less fatigued from walking. But he also wasn't nearly as fatigued from just keeping his balance and keeping himself upright. The Segway did the balancing for him. Any little slight lean forward or backward and it would move back to directly under him. So, before he became confined to a wheelchair and finally bedridden, it was a great tool for him. I might know your uncle. Was he a mechanical engineer? A guy at our company did exactly this in that time period. He was awesome. I really miss him. MS is a terrible fate. No, but interesting that he had a similar experience. It really was a great tool for him. They said that the Segway would change the way we designed our cities. Yeah. I am trying to imagine this reality and just seeing lots and lots of back injuries. Google Glass. Google Plus. You could probably fill the thread with just Google projects. Google Stadia. I think the issue with Stadia was Google's release strategy. It was ridiculous that people were being asked to pay full price to stream games. Like, they couldn't even download a copy like all other digital purchases. If they had adopted a Game Pass subscription model instead, it could have really been something. But alas, the tech was there, but the strategy wasn't. Yay TF happened to those. From what I understand, there was a huge amount of blowback around the privacy aspect of it. People didn't like the idea of people being able to walk around filming everything they see. I personally love the Google Glass idea, particularly from an augmented reality point of view, like being able to overlay Google Map directions on your glasses or real-time translation of signs, etc. Those weird 4D movie with the smell, does anyone even remember those? They felt like fever dreams. I remember when I was a kid they used to show movies on TV that were smell-o-vision. You went to the store and got a card with a bunch of different scratch and sniff stickers on it. During the movie they would show one on the screen and you were supposed to scratch that sticker at that time. Like, in the movie a car would squeal its tires, and you would scratch a sticker that smelled like burning rubber. Or someone would give another character flowers, so you would scratch a sticker that was supposed to smell like flowers. It was bizarre. I had never heard of this before. Boy, I feel left out. I've been once to a screening like this. It was this ridiculous move. I watched Captain America Civil War in 4D. It was not a good experience. Someone had a seizure in the row behind me during the airport fight scene and the person controlling the movie took ages to switch it off, so the seizing person was basically getting crushed by the moving chairs. This feels like a Tim Robinson sketch. Hebe. It's like they forgot that we already all had YouTube. I remember hearing about this on NPR right before COVID. Quick shows you can watch on the go right when people weren't going anywhere. Very bad timing and a bad concept. Their actual strategy didn't make any sense either. Like, Katzenberg was convinced people would watch them in line for coffee? Who would watch a television show that way? No kidding. The best dick move of when to watch. 11 minutes video in a less than 3 minutes line. Quibi went free in New Zealand for its last couple of months and I genuinely enjoyed using it. Lol. I watched a few different movies that were cut into small chunks. As a concept it was weird, but when you tried it the way they wanted you to, it didn't suck. The movies weren't just cut on 5 meters mark but cut to sensible stopping points, and the reframing for portrait was very carefully done. They also do a few neat things with their own content where they had different stuff depending on if you had the phone in portrait or landscape. One I recall being set in a car with a guy driving, portrait was aimed at him. Landscape was looking out the front of the car. Metaverse. Corporate MMO. It was never going to work. What did it even accomplish that WoW can't? Even if it's silly, it's technically possible for a bunch of managers employees to pick human avatars and hold a meeting in e.g. the starting area. Playing FF14. People have live music and theater events, bars, nightclubs, erotic roleplay. Long-running MMOs already have something close to what Zuck was describing as his meta-universe. And that's not even talking about Second Life, which seems to have had more features on launch 20 years ago than Meta today. And then they ran all those ads showing adaptations of augmented reality and pretending it had anything to do with Meta. Yeah, all those examples are neat when they became reality. Ain't to anything to do with Meta though, lol. The Tata Nano. The company set out to build the lowest price new car in the world. And it succeeded. Unfortunately, newly middle-class Indian families didn't want the stigma of owning the world's cheapest new car. So sales never came anywhere close to expectations. Those are so cute. Yeah, it's like a smart car. Not a complete failure. It failed because the new chairman of the Tata Group didn't see its potential in cash revenue. This led to a boardroom coup with an earlier chairman, which led to disclosure that the car was not doing that great. This led to people not wanting nano car and subsequently it stopped manufacturing in a few years. About 25 years ago, they thought ostrich meat would be as popular as chicken. I remember that. My stepdad brought some home one night. A friend of his wanted to start an ostrich farm and wanted my stepdad to invest. I do not remember liking ostrich meat, and he did not invest. The farm did open, but it failed in about 2 years. Lol. This was my dad's midlife crisis move in the 80s. He tried to convince my mother, aunt and uncle to open an ostrich farm. His reasoning wasn't only about the meat. You could sell eggs, feathers, ostrich skin for leather and that the entire bird was profit. Fortunately, he got talked out of it since he didn't know jack sh about farming or ostriches. Lamau. Australian coworker said they go through the same thing every 20 years or so where kangaroo meat is going to replace beef. It fails for the same reason. Cows and chickens are relatively docile compared to ostriches and kangaroos. If you put a roo in a crate to transport it, it will literally beat itself to death trying to escape. Maybe I visited at the peak of kangaroo mania, but I saw extensive kangaroo selections in the supermarkets there. It was pretty good. Fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Edit. Amazing how many of you uncultured peasants don't get this quote. Not with that attitude. We all know that Oxyos is clearly superior. What is the most creative insult you've ever heard? My wife says that I have the fashion sense of a colorblind pimp. Not saying she's wrong. Though, I heard this one at work: having Bob on your team is like having two good workers quit. Lol, that second one is gold. Poor Bob, he's trying his best. I'm not sure we know that. Let's unpack it. To a line. Here's what I've been seeing. So we got Bob. He's a classic come in 18 minutes early so he can put his items down and go get his coffee. There's a 37% chance he doesn't make it to his desk before spilling on himself. Linda will definitely come ask him if he likes the tomatoes from her garden that she gave him yesterday. Bob dislikes tomatoes. He said they were the juiciest he's ever had. Thanks, Linda. Greg is headed over soon to tell Bob he's swamped and needs a hand. Greg wants to go golfing and claim he's with a client so he can expense it. Bob is busy today but takes Greg's project anyway. Bob royally messes up Greg's project and misses his own deadlines while taking on Greg's work. Not looking good for Bob today. Bam! Susan and Kathy are talking in the lunchroom at 10:30 a.m. Susan thinks she's funny by saying having Bob on your team is like losing two good employees. Spoiler alert, Pete was grabbing water and overheard. Honestly, Pete just isn't taking anyone's anymore after his brother outed him at the family Easter brunch last week. Pete silently walks back to his desk and resigns the Bob project to Susan. It's already missed the deadline when she realizes it's hers. Fucks you, Susan. You've missed deadlines for the last time here. GTFO. Okay, maybe Bob isn't great, but he's no Susan. What have you heard? Bob reminds me of a guy I used to work with. He Kevin stuff so hard. His name became a verb. My work has a Kevin who Kevin stuff. About 10 years ago a guy drove past me and yelled out the window, "Your mustache doesn't suit you." I'm still not over it. I hope you're not a woman, cause that's just devastating. I'm not with that attitude you're not. Did you shave it? No. First time I went to dinner at my BF's parents' house, he warned me his brother has the modesty and humility of a newly moneyed rapper. He might try to suck his own cock during dinner. This is flawlessly phrased. I've never met your boyfriend and I'm attracted to him. It's the cocky, sardonic bag lover in me. Guess it's just someone about folks who choose Dramio usernames. Edit, I guess some folks saw the similar usernames and decided to jump to the assumption that they were the same person talking to themselves for karma farming purposes. I dunno. People think weird things, man. I don't know if it was my comment that drew their attention to it, or if they arrived at that independently, but I was just making a goofy observation about similar usernames having similar tastes. I need to know how that dinner went. Honestly, it would take forever to go through it. I'll just add that he murmured the line about his brother, just as his family was walking in, knowing it would make me blush. Then he said I looked flushed, and asked if it was too warm, with mock concern. A former coworker was getting some from one of our customers. After the customer said something particularly bad, my coworker looked him square in the face and said comments like, "That is probably why you're missing teeth." Your coworker was probably right, lol. Could also have been the MAF. Hey, no need to be mean about it. They've just got their summer teeth in. Some are there, some are not. This sounds like an extremely old joke, but I've never heard it before and I love it. It could be that the purpose of your life is to serve as a warning to others. Jolly good and so evil. Jonah managed to save an entire city from the wrath of God, yet he's only remembered for running away and getting swallowed by a fish. No matter how big our accomplishments, our failures will outlive them as lessons for others to learn from. I did not attend his funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved of it. Mark Twain. Mark Twain once said about Jane Austen, "It seems a great pity that they allowed her to die a natural death." Jesus lol, why did he dislike her so much? I was going to make a joke about him getting rejected, but I looked it up and she'd been dead for 18 years by the time he was born. So what the F? I've got some beef with Hemingway, but I'm not actively wishing he'd had a worse death. Then again, his was already pretty gruesome. A similar one from Clarence Darrow. I've never wished a man dead, but I have read some obituaries with great pleasure. There was a dude who went to be a prep cook in the restaurant I work at. Him and a waitress get into an argument, and he says your dildo must turn flaccid when you use it. He was fired the next day and me and a cook were yelled at by our boss for laughing. Fired? That's like standard kitchen flirting. Another week and someone would have caught those two banging in the walk-in. This guy back-off houses. Worked in restaurants for about 4 years. There had been an attempted kidnapping in our city and we were talking about in the bow as we were all doing side work. I'd mentioned offhandedly how terrifying that must have been, and one of the cooks turned and said, "If you ever get kidnapped, Just start talking and they'll return you. Beau banter is unmatched. Anyways, I dated that guy for 5 years. I love this. My first pre-cook job, I cut myself so often that more of my fingers than not would be sporting those little finger cots, colloquially, finger condoms, and my first station started calling me Finger Bang. Anyways, we've been married for 8 years. Your mom had to think about other babies while breastfeeding you. First one in this whole thread that got me. My mother never breastfed me. She told me she liked me as a friend. Rodney Dangerfield. We were so poor, it's a good thing I was born a boy, or I wouldn't have had anything to play with. When I was in high school, there was a guy that was upset about the grade he received on a project. He asked the teacher why he got an F and the teacher replied, "Because we don't give out G's." Wow. Darn, that's cutting. That's effing brilliant. Reminds of when they asked Antoine Walker why he shot so many threes and he said, "'Cause there ain't no fours." Ref had made some pretty SH calls that favored the other team. One of my teammates skates over to the ref. He has a beer belly, pats his stomach and says, "Aw, ref, I think you're pregnant. You've missed a few periods." The ref went ballistic and kicked him out of the game. It took a while for both teams to stop laughing. Missed a few periods. Icing on the cake on that one. Oh man, that was a good pun. This reminds me of a story my dad always tells. Small town, Iowa. Baseball game. My grandfather is up to bat, and his father is the ump. He strikes out on a called third strike and mutters quietly, "Ump, I think you missed that one." His dad replies, "I wouldn't have if I had a bat in my hands." There is a video somewhere on YouTube of an umpire ejecting the organ player when he started 3 blind mice after a call. Heard a boss tell someone, "Don't overestimate your value." Goddard, that's brutal. If I ever heard that from a boss, I'd probably walk out due to humiliation. Never forget, you need us a lot more than we'll ever need you. Was golfing and stopped to pee on a tree. Didn't realize I was facing the direction of oncoming cart path and this guy yells out while driving by. "Looks like a penis, only smaller." Someone call the cops. I see a man holding a child's penis. Got M. Hey, you know it's illegal for a grown man to hold a child's penis. I read this comment on a post where a guy explained how amazing he felt after the first time that a girl asked him out. The first response, "Cool man. What breed was her guide dog?" My father said something similar when I told them about the first time I kissed a girl. Did her guide dog bark at you or something? Fatality. What he lacked in brains he made up for with stupidity has always stuck with me. Thank God you've been spared the ravages of intelligence. Time bandits. I'm thinking you weren't burdened with an overabundance of schooling, Firefly. My days of not taking you seriously are certainly coming to a middle. Also Firefly. From Bob's Burgers. If she was a spice, she'd be flour. If she were a book, she'd be 2 books. What does this one mean? Boring, tedious, supported by the point Louise was trying to make about the person. Similarly, I heard someone use no-purpose flour as an insult, and for some reason that just broke me. I put it elsewheres, but in the same vein I knew a voice teacher that referred to someone as multi-talentless, in a Scottish accent. Very choice. You think in low power mode. Lol, ouch. I knew someone who used to say he doesn't have enough gigabytes about anyone particularly slow or stupid at work. One of my sister's teachers would compliment someone's bovine grace if she was certain they would miss the insult. I always like that one. Bovines can be really graceful though. Oh, I forgot. Grant O'Mahara. Ooh, Carrie. Oh, Grant. Well, you don't want too much grace or you won't be able to stand. Told my soldier private, those aren't acne scars on your face. Those are battle scars of you dodging the coat hanger for 9 months. Needless to say, I was counseled for that statement. That's the most brutal thing I've read all week. Have you ever considered the benefits of a frontal lobotomy? Overheard being said in a casual conversational manner by one man to another who was ranting about something. I honestly couldn't understand what. Somehow I read that in David Tennant's voice. Specifically with his doctor face on. On a similar note from the comic strip Pearls Before Swine, have you considered hitting yourself in the head with a shoe until your brain restarts? Is it wrong to mace stupid people? I'll F your father and give him a child he'll actually love. This will be useful in COD lobbies. Yank. Still legendary. What was ruined for everyone by one single person? The name Adolf has gotta be up there. Absolutely, while not nearly as destructive. Having the last name Dahmer has got to suck pretty bad. Imagine being named Adolf Dahmer. You can have that. Or Jeffrey Hitler. It's up to you. The guy who attempted to smuggle a bee in his shoe in 2001. Now we all have to suffer taking our shoes off at airport security every darn time we fly. Also, whoever did the thing with liquids that convinced security that more than 3-4 ounces of shampoo was potentially deadly can F right off. Traveled recently and was surprised at how many things I wanted to take were 4 ounces. 4 ounces. To freedom. At a previous job, we got full uniforms, shirts, pants, hats, hoodies, winter coveralls, winter coats, gloves, but we don't get shoes or boots. Turns out a couple of years before I was hired on, they used to give boots, but one guy would take his boots and sell them, then request a replacement, then sell those. He did this about 20 times before anybody caught on because of municipal bureaucracy being slow to notice. When they caught on, they stopped giving out boots to their employees. Edit. I worked as a park maintenance groundskeeper for Parks and Recreation. Edit. No, it is not like the show. It's always some douchebag who ruins it for everyone else. My company gives a $100 stipend for safety boots per year. You can either get the base model or use the $100 towards a cooler pair. I worked for a company that did something like this. Only the safety shoe store showed up to the warehouse every 34 months before our shift started. With a mobile store in the back of a truck. We'd get to go into the truck, try on some shoes, and we could pick any pair and walk out with them. I think they were all $150. But it was a long time ago. They'd just give the bill to our employer and they took care of it. Wasn't docked from our pay or anything. We were only allowed 1 pair per calendar year, but everyone took advantage of it to get a fresh pair when they could. This is what we do. But we also provide storage boxes for the boots in the locker room along with the high visibility gear. It stopped a string of employees claiming their boots were lost or stolen at home or in transit. So now you wear your street shoes in and change in the ready room. When they caught on, they stopped giving out boots to their employees. Rather than just saying 1 per employee ever, that's just nuts. Also, seems like dude probably could have lost them a lot slower and ran his game longer. I usually need 2 boots. The person who apparently choked on a lollipop at my bank and now we don't get lollipops anymore. Honestly, we could blame their insurance company. And the mother effer that choked on a lollipop. No sh. He's a effing adult and doesn't know to eat a darn lollipop without choking and then blames the person who gave it to him? They don't even give out stickers anymore. Now going to the bank isn't fun for kids. But are there still pens on strings? I always found those fun as a kid. Other firefighters constantly ruin any sort of appreciation restaurants give out. We had a barbecue restaurant that would give a flat $10 off your meal. If you didn't spend $10 it was basically free. One guy ruined it on an $8 order by demanded the $2 be given to him as well. Had people going in uniform on days they didn't work. Had one guy have a family reunion at a local restaurant then made a big issue they wouldn't give his entire party the discount. I don't understand how out of touch people can be. I worked at a froyo place and after a certain number of visits you will get a free cup. Technically the rule was up to $5. However, the owner of the store was really nice and said, nah, if they come here that often, then they should get their 1 cup free. For a few years it was going well. Since it's self-serve and based on weight, most people were careful about making their cups and never really overfilling. Sometimes kids would be a little overzealous. But no one really did anything crazy. Eventually one day, a guy who in all honesty was smart, I'll give him that, filled the cup to the brim, then added our waffle cone chips around the edges to create a barrier. He dispensed even more froyo, then made another wall on top of that. He did this about 6 times. TBH, I was very invested and also just amazed at how he did this. The average price for a small that was decently filled with toppings. Most people were in the $5, $7 range. This dude managed to make this a $27 cup. For free. Because technically it just has to fit into the 1 cup. The owner asked me about that suspicious transaction and I told him all about it. He was like, oh okay. Check the cameras, and even he was impressed. This dude ended up telling other people, who then told more people and so on. At this point our store was actually losing money on the free cups. It got worse because now people were trying to cram so many toppings into their cups, that about 90% of the toppings would end up on the floor. So that was costing us even more. Eventually we changed up the policy to the $5 max. People weren't happy, but we all gladly explained that people were getting out of hand and we were trying to do something nice, and it was taken advantage of. This is why Mongolian barbecue places always have that sign saying they reserve the right to charge you for a bigger bowl than you picked or for multiple bowls. Some people build stupid high stacks of food in those bowls. Dude did this at our EMS service too. Not only did we lose the free on-shift coffees they'd been giving us, but our boss put in a policy that we couldn't go out in uniform at all unless on a call, which basically meant no leaving the station at all during shift or standby. They later turned the second one around since it was stupid, but we still disliked that guy. Knew a guy who did this took his whole family to a Cold Stone Creamery and demanded EMS discount for 9 family members. When he was called the fattest and laziest on our staff BTW, he stated, "It's my right as a hero." There went the discount and he lost what slight bit of respect he had from staff. Previous job I had used to be hybrid twice a week. One person, on their hybrid day, decided to slack off work and go out. They got a call from their manager because they were late for a virtual meeting and the manager heard a lot of background noise like they were at the mall or something. Said person eventually admitted they were not home working, got fired, and now everyone had to be in the office 5 days a week. Here I am sitting in my office moving my mouse every couple minutes while using Reddit on my phone as living proof that you can also slack off when at the office. When I worked as an EMT, I would regularly work out for an hour, play video games using the company phone Wi-Fi, and take a nap before the first call would even come in. I also taught myself to do some programming on shift between calls as well. One time I managed to work on one of my cars as well. You definitely don't need to be home to slack off. I feel like as an EMT, or any first responder, you're being paid for your availability. At a certain point in U.S. Army basic training, your platoon is given the opportunity to sit and eat without having to wait for the entire company. And with that comes the fact that if one person is finished eating, we're all finished eating. This one trainee who happened to sit early finished his dinner before the other side of the table even got to start. He stood up, but the DS promptly made everyone else get up too. Eaten or not, this same trainee did the exact same thing the next day, except now it was breakfast, so a few people didn't get dinner or breakfast. I'll never forget the nasty they did to his bunk and locker dude. Couldn't really feel bad for him. And you best believe nobody stood up early for the rest of BCT. Edit, wow, this blew up overnight. I'm gonna try to answer a couple questions I've read. What did they do to his bunk? They took the dirty mop bucket water, pissed in it, and dumped over his bunk and foot locker. This happened on a Sunday morning, which is the one day the DS will leave you alone till noon. The perpetrator was at church lol. Was it intentional? No. The first time was a genuine mistake as it was a brand new rule. I actually watched him the second time. He started to stand and realized his mistake. But the grumpiest DS saw him do that awkward stand-sit movement and that was it for the table. Luckily I wasn't on the table that lost the breakfast. But I still felt no sympathy for him. No dinner plus would dislike for you can eat out the door breakfast woulda had me join in too. Was he stupid? Yes. I'm actually shocked that retribution didn't happen after the first lost meal. Cause the first time is an accident. The second time you're an intentional dick. Or really stupid and you have to force the issue through their thick skulls. Had a retail job and we used to be able to play our own CDs in the store, which was awesome. I wasn't working that day but apparently Mike thought playing Rage Against the Machine's self-titled album was a good idea. And of course King in the Name played while upper management was passing through. Several FBS later there was a policy change. It sucked so much because they set up a MP3 system with about 90 minutes worth of music that we could not change. The repetition of the same songs got old real fast and I quit shortly after. Working in the grocery store during Christmas killed my tolerance of Christmas music permanently. Last Christmas I gave you my heart. I'm going all in. Simply, having a wonderful Christmas time. So now you do what they told you? He's under control. My primary school used to do relatively frequent trips to a local zoo, until one boy decided to vault the fence and punch a penguin. I wish I was joking. A effing penguin? They're like harmless little bobbleheads. WTF. Ada, my 3A brain forgot a lot about penguins that y'all have helped reignite. Oh, they're not harmless. Apparently. I bought my wife a feed the penguins thing at the Philly Zoo and the lady said keep an eye on them as if they get too close to your legs they might bite you. There's a penguin named Kevin who is not allowed to take part in the penguin parade at my local zoo. In the words of the penguin keeper, he knows what he did. That's really messed up. What a joy he must have been at home. Had one kid in my class try to strangle a really friendly duck when we went to the zoo as a class. We never went back to the zoo. Back around the mid-2000s I was around 10 years old and I used to go to this place after school called the Boys and Girls Club. They had an area with multiple basketball hoops on a court which we used to play all kinds of games in. One of those games being dodgeball. These were not those big rubber balls but instead the styrofoam-filled balls with kind of a thin layer of plastic so otherwise harmless. One of the kids thought it would be a good idea to shove a rock into one of the balls and throw it at someone he didn't like. Well, he ended up throwing it right into that kid's face and broke 2 of his front teeth. We never played dodgeball again. That's some prison yard sh. I work in a prison and the inmates all act like dangerous 5-year-olds. I do think some people just either stop aging due to trauma, or were never going to have adult brains in the first place. Sometimes a combo plate. If you ever look at someone whose behavior mystifies you, figure out what age they remind you of, and then look up their symptoms and behaviors and it all becomes, at least a little, more clear.